So, Bill, I know we've talked before over dinner, and I was just thinking about you today. You know, when you were an atheist, you always talked about killing yourself. You actually had this plan to kill yourself at some point. You weren't real old, but you really had an agenda. What was, I'm trying to figure that out.
You know, it's so many years ago now. I was 24, and I had made up my mind. I was gambling for a living, and gambling was no longer really exciting enough. And so I decided that I didn't want to live past 25 because I might have to actually get employment of some kind. I couldn't see that as any sort of future. I thought only fools bothered with such matters. So it seemed rational to me as a young atheist that the only thing you can control in life, because I knew life was meaningless, and I thought that pleasure was the only thing that you should live for, right? So that's logical if you're an atheist. So I decided that I could control my death. So that was something within my power. Everything else seemed out of my power. So I remember reading about Ernest Hemingway and about how he had lined up his deer rifle and killed himself. And I decided that for me, it would be more of a pills kind of a death, because I did not really want to live in a humdrum world where it looked like I'd have to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, get off at 5. So I didn't have and remember, I was sold on this philosophy and I was sort of logical about it. Now, as you know, I put myself in a room, and the only thing that saved my life was because the one person I owed a debt to was my mother, who really had tried as hard as she could and just couldn't persuade me that there was a proper way to live. So I knew there wasn't a proper note I could write to assuage her guilt. So after some time in this little room where I became a very rich man due to betting without trying very hard, and the Lord really had a funny way of dealing with me. Instead of making me poor, he made me rich beyond what I could imagine without trying. And it ruined that for me too. Winning became no fun. The last thing that I thought was fun.
So you were betting on what?
On professional basketball in those days, and they wouldn't let me bet large amounts. I could only bet a few $100s before I'd have to change the points in those days.
Interesting.
It'd be equivalent of betting a few thousand a day, but I had money stacked around this apartment that would have paid my rent for something like 42 years or something.
Oh my goodness.
So I was laughing at it, and finally the phone rang and somebody invited me to dinner. And as you know, I hadn't gone out of this apartment in months. I just sent cabs for my food, right? So it was a funny existence. But I think about it now because when we had that conversation today with Melanie,
yes,
and I was relating that most of the people who claim to be atheists that I know are not really atheists. And if they were, the one thing that's funny about it is the only thing that an atheist can really control in a meaningless life.
Yes,
because which they believe their life is meaningless. So they give it over to pleasure, just like Christopher Hitchens did. So when Christopher Hitchens was dying, right, and you can see he's lost all of his hair, he's going through this thing. My question was, for a man who says life's all about pleasure, he's a hedonist, right? Why doesn't he just kill himself? See, it's rational. If that's all there is, if there is no God, if there is no judgment, if this is it, and now you're going to be somebody who's feeble, and you're going to have somebody help you go to the bathroom, and you can't feed yourself, and you don't go out in public, why in the world wouldn't you terminate your life? It's within your power. And I tried to say to you today and to them, historically, guys like, some of them do, Hemingway. You'll find others like that, and I can give you the names, but most don't. And that's why it's more likely that you're going to find them that they don't really believe in atheism. They're just people who say they do. So when you get the W.C. Fields thing, remember when Fields is dying, He's lived his whole life claiming he's an atheist. And when he's in the hospital dying, a friend comes up to see him, and Fields has a Bible by his bed. And the guy says to him, I thought you were an atheist. And he said, well, I am, but I'm looking for loopholes. Right? I've told you story after story when I've gone up to be with people who work for me who were atheists. And every one of them trembles and fights on leaving this world when it should be an end to their pain. And if you live for pleasure, pain is your only enemy.
Yeah.
So it's an irrational atheist that you're dealing with, right? And when you're dealing with an irrational atheist, it's very hard to be impressed with that. If people are going to be really devout atheists, they need to actually be Hemingway. It's the only rational end to an atheist's life. Now, I'm thankful they're not. I'm glad they're irrational because many times at that hospital, I've had a chance to talk to them. And then they come out of that funk, and I can at least have a day or two to talk to people about their soul and the judgment they're going to face.
The real meaning of
Yes, yes. And then many times they're very receptive because there's no crowd there, and reality sets in the hospital.
death makes you really think about what's happening.
We should never be afraid to tell worldly people about death. Why? It's the very thing they fear. They like pleasure and death, right? The loss of pleasure and death are very troubling to people who care only about pleasure and money and longing to live longer than they're going to.
Yeah.
So
Money goes, everything goes.
we want to tell them about Christ first. I'm saying to you, they won't open that door, so you often have to talk to them about the things they'll allow. And one of the things you do is puncture that balloon dream they have that life's going to go on forever and that they're never going to have the troubles and that nobody can take their money from them, right? When you can lose your ability to move your hand, right, and your foot to move you somewhere that's comfortable and warm, and you realize on top of that, all your money can disappear, right? All the pleasure goes and all the pain comes. It's a very troubling thing to somebody whose heaven is right here now. And that's all they have.